Welcome to the WoW podcast, where we bring you inspiring stories and insights from our university community. Tune in for conversations about growth, success, and the power of communication in the academic world. So get ready to soar with us on the wings of wisdom.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Wings of Wisdom podcast for the fall 2025 Ashland University semester. My name is David Carl, and I'm thrilled to have taken over the WCC this past summer and have a chance to continue the WoW podcast for the coming year. Joining me today is our Associate Director, Andrew Roble, and one of our great new coaches in the center, Zach Harrison, who is a junior business major and plays on the AU soccer team. Our guest today has dedicated his career to champion improvements to student life, higher education, and public service. He's got a background in communication, leadership, and university administration, and he's held influential roles, including Dean of Students at Houghton College, Director of Student Activities Department at Hobart and William Smith Colleges, as well as developing the Center for Student Engagement at the University of Evansville in Indiana. His career has centered on expanding access to education, fostering intercultural diversity, and supporting students to grow club sports programs and other initiatives, both formal and informal. After a BA in Philosophy and Speech Communication and an MA in Counseling and Higher Education Administration at Southeast Missouri State University, Dr. Poole received his PhD in Higher Education Leadership and Foundations from Indiana State University. Now, as the Vice President of Student Affairs, Auxiliary Services, and the Title IX Coordinator for Ashland University, he brings a wealth of experience and a deep commitment to academic excellence. So please welcome Dr. Robert Poole to the Wings of Wisdom podcast. So thanks for joining us today, Dr. Poole. I was going to start out with the first several questions, and then maybe Andrew's going to ask you a few, and then Zach's going to ask you a few, and then we'll close up.
All right.
So, what drew you to Southeast Missouri State University to begin your undergraduate studies?
Oh, David, thanks for having me on the show, guys. I appreciate it. So my entree into college was a little bit roundabout. I was heading off to the Army. I was already sworn in to the delayed entry program as a new recruit and realized fairly soon before my ship date that college was now an option for me. I didn't think it was when I graduated from high school. My father, who was an Army recruiter, didn't recruit me because that's not possible, sat me down with my mom and said, "Hey, we just came into a little bit of money when your grandmother passed, and so we want to let you know that if you want to go straight to college, we can make that happen." That was not an option for me prior to that. So I went off as a first-generation college student. And the reason Southeast Missouri State was the choice is because I'd been there for a physics Olympics. I was chosen to attend out of our high school physics class, and then really enjoyed it. First time on a college campus, and was just enamored with the faculty, the facilities, the excitement. And so Southeast was where I headed fall of 1990.
Okay. And where did you grow up?
So I grew up in a variety of places. Again, my dad being in the Army.
Yeah.
Started off in Anchorage, Alaska, where I was born,
All right.
and lived in several states, Missouri, Michigan, back to Alaska, back to Missouri. A little
Right.
bit of a geographic mutt.
Me too. Same time. I moved 5 times as a kid, and mostly in the Midwest. So,
Yeah.
and several in Ohio. Started in Ohio and ended up back in Ohio. So, so you originally studied communications, but then you pivoted to counseling and higher education administration for your MA. So, what caused you to make that shift?
Yeah, my majors were philosophy and speech communication. I loved the professors. That's one of the reasons why I chose them, because I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. I knew that it was probably going to be law. So I poured myself into philosophy, loved it, and seemed to have a pretty good knack for giving speeches. My professors encouraged me to try speech communication, so that's the route I went. When law school was coming into focus, was a time when I was really involved in college, and my VP of Student Affairs at the time, Sue Ann Strom, said, Rob, why don't you think about going to grad school? We'll pay for your grad school. We'll give you a stipend, and you'll be done in 2 years instead of 3. I'm like, done. It was like, wow, okay. Loved college. I was involved in so much. I didn't want to leave. So when I got to my end of my master's, when I got to the end of my BA, went to get my master's, I thought I'm going to just stay in higher education forever. And so that's when I started my work. The only program they offered at my undergraduate that would get you into a higher ed field was counseling with an emphasis in student affairs. So that was the program I joined.
Right. It's that's a common story, right? Happenstance, and end up going on the path that you never thought. I have all this communication and history background, and then in 1995, I partially because of I was internationally oriented, but partly because I needed to pay off student loans. Yeah. I went off to Japan to teach English as a foreign language, and that ended up being awesome. What I did for the next 3 decades. So I thought, oh, this is what I like. So I think that's pretty. So Zach, if you're listening here, you never know where you're going to end up. Some people know what they're going to do when they're 7 years old, and that's what they end up doing. But a lot of people, just end up things in life push you in directions you never anticipated. So how did your time studying philosophy and counseling, do you think, influence your later work, when you went on to do your PhD in higher education leadership and foundations at Indiana State?
Yeah, well, my undergraduate and master's degree at a public institution didn't have the motto, we teach you how to think, not what to think, but that's exactly my experience. My philosophy professors were from all over the world, from England and parts of the United States. One of them wrote questions for the LSAT. They were very keen on critical thinking, deep analysis, thoughtful, critical writing skills. And so it really set me up to think about living and learning and growing and having a career in higher education just seemed to be the right fit. So after a few years of being married and my wife cajoling me to continue on my career path, I finally found a program that would fit our lifestyle. I was working full-time and married with, at the time, 2 kids. And the program from Indiana State was a hybrid program, one of the very first in the nation, where you could take the majority of your classes online and then come to the campus for 2-3 week intensive over the summer, and then have some long weekends every couple of months. So that was what drew me, not only the desire to stay in higher education. I love working with students. I love the atmosphere of creating new knowledge and athletics. And this was the ticket to get there, that PhD. It wound up being a great fit for me.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I told you in an email, and I'm not sure that Andrew and Zach know, but yeah, we lived in Terre Haute for about 4.5 years and taught at Indiana State. So
yeah,
it's one of my
connections there.
One of my homes, one of my many. So small world. Anyway, thanks for that. I think I'm going to pass it off to Dr. Roble here. He's got a few questions for you next.
Yeah.
Hi, Dr. Poole. I kind of want to talk about some of your service initiatives, if you don't mind, but if you can we circle back to one of your answers that you gave? I believe you talked about a Dr. Susan, was it Strom?
Yeah.
So she came up to you and the genesis of your getting your master's was a conversation with her. Was it something like you were walking on campus, setting up your iPad and you bumped into her, or you walked into the office looking for another classroom and she was there and she just said, "Hey, by the way, do you want to get a master's?" How did that work?
Great question. This is before the days of iPad, unfortunately. I'm a little bit older, but yes, I was at a fraternity recruitment party. I just finished my undergraduate, but I was still very involved in my fraternity, Lambda Chi Alpha, which was a new chartered fraternity when I started. And she was an invited guest at this event. It was an outdoor barbecue. And she just asked me, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm looking at law school. I just got accepted, but I'm having second thoughts." And she kind of offered unsolicited, "Hey, have you thought about working in higher education? And my response, and Dr. Warble, was, oh, you can get a PhD in that? And she goes, well, Rob, that's what I have, and that's what I'm doing as VP for Student Affairs. So, like David mentioned, a lot of us get to this position serendipitously. It's not usually a direct path. It's usually kind of serpentine. And so her response was to my visible and clear confusion as to what was going to be the right next step for me. And through prayer and discernment, God was able to open up those doors in ways that I had never even thought of. And lo and behold, within about a month and a half, I was signed up. I was working for the orientation program at Southeast Missouri State in the office of the Vice President for Student Affairs. So it was right place, right time, and Lord willing, it was the right fit.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I'm really happy that that happened to you, and I do believe in serendipity, but I also believe that by being a strong participant in your college experience and service to others also puts you in that position where you would meet people that could help accelerate your education or continue it in your circumstances. So I'm very happy that you were there, and so is she. Continuing on with this, can you explain a little bit about what it was like developing both campus-wide and community-wide programs that you really personally created, that they didn't exist before you made them?
Yeah. Well, there's a little bit of combo. I built upon a foundation that was already there, so I'll get into that. But I was blessed my undergraduate years as well as high school years to have mentors and teachers around me who imposed or impressed upon me the ethic of service. Scripturally, the heart of our faith, as Jesus said to the disciples, is, I have come to serve, not to be served. And likewise, you shall serve one another, he says to his apostles. So that was kind of the refrain I heard growing up in my church, and I was involved as a royal ambassador. So the ethic of service, serving others, is part of kind of how I've been raised. And then when I got to my undergraduate, I mentioned Lambda Chi Alpha fraternity just started. They were a colony when I got there, and I was not a charter member, but I was not a colony founding father. I was a charter member. So I was the first class that was brought in as a new charter. And they had a long series of service projects we did throughout the year, like a lot of fraternities do. So when I got my first job after my master's degree at the University of Evansville, it was assistant director and activities assistant. And that included a volunteer service program that had just launched the year prior. So I took over a brand new volunteer service office and grew it from about 5 students to about 30 students, and grew it from about 5 or 6 programs to about, I don't know, we probably had about 100 students serving in different capacities, and we grew that to about 400 students by the time we were done. We also applied for a grant to bring in tutors and train tutors. So Zach, you might be interested in this. We had a federal grant that helped us pay for students to help kids in K through 3rd grade learn to read at their grade level. Because what we found is, the research is pretty clear on this, if you can just make a small little variation when they're kindergarten 1st through 3rd, that little bump in tutoring, by the time they get to 6th grade, 8th grade, high school, that gap in abilities to read, abilities to study is so much greater if you can get them to read at level kindergarten, 1st and 3rd grade. So we were able to send college students out to elementary schools, sit down with them in small groups and one-on-one, teaching them to read the fundamentals of reading. One of the most rewarding things I've ever done is work in that program. It was amazing. We would get notes back from the kids with rainbows and pictures of their tutors, and they would throw birthday parties for their tutors. It was really cool.
And that's not the only kind of program like that you spearheaded. Can you talk about some other initiatives you created like that you're still very proud of?
Oh, sure. So while I was at the University of Evansville, we created the Center for Student Engagement. It was just a kind of a traditional student activities office prior, and we wanted to use research to show how students were learning who they were. That's a very important part in the college students' lives, is getting clarity on what your strengths are, your talents, what your giftings are, and where you're being called to. So the Center for Student Engagement was designed to not just have activities and programs and students involved in membership. It was to invoke those types of questions to ask, who are you? What are your strengths and talents? And how is that going to be used to serve a greater world? How are your talents and skills going to make other lives better by virtue of being involved in campus activities board, a fraternity sorority, a sport club, all kinds of ways. But putting that service mentality into activities was something we did at the University of Evansville, and creating that Center for Student Engagement, not just activities. So activities with a purpose, if you will. We also launched some new initiatives when I was at Hobart and William Smith colleges. There was no way of knowing how well fraternities were doing in terms of their engagement with the university. So we created an accreditation system. We call it 5-star here at Ashland University. But there we created something from scratch to help everyone realize these are the expectations for service, for fundraising, for academic excellence, for and a variety of other things that were important. Like they all had houses, like these big stately houses. So we had an entire accreditation system about safety, maintaining the homes, investing in them, and so forth. Those are some pretty important things that I'm proud of in my early career years.
Wonderful, wonderful. And obviously, you have participated in a lot of organizations and done a lot of activities that required your personal service to them. And as somebody who also did service learning in undergrad and graduate school, I did ESL. And I could tell you that you could not wipe that stupid smile I had on my face after leaving, working with those people with the left hook. I mean, you were just like so engaged, so happy, so energetic after doing it. And they just gave you so much love and energy. You just wanted to come back. You never wanted those sessions to end. You just wanted to keep going. So my service would go back, but that kind of service for me as a student goes back now. I didn't even want to mention how many years ago, but service is certainly evolving now in 2025 in today's society. Can you explain a little bit how that change is coming upon us and how we're reacting to it?
Yeah, and I think faculty for decades now have been incorporating service more and more into their classes. Like how does what you're learning in the classroom apply to real world needs? So that is one of the areas that we developed when I was at the University of Evansville. We were able to get some campus compact grants. These are state agencies that help funnel money to colleges. And we developed several service learning curriculum development grants so that faculty who wanted to incorporate service could do so. But for today's faculty and for today's classroom, you're seeing a lot more internships, which for the company who receives an internship, it's service hours really, because the company's not paying for those hours. You're seeing a lot more experiential learning happening on the ground at nonprofits, in companies. That's huge. That's what the umbrella term there is: experiential learning. Service, volunteer service is one way of doing experiential learning. We have AU Gives here, and a lot of students, a lot of student athletes, clubs and organizations recognize the power of getting to know your fellow students, making a difference in the lives of kids and older adults, retirees in our community. I think this generation coming up, Zach, your generation, is much more service-minded than maybe previous generations, because you guys have seen firsthand social media in the classroom. It just kind of like happens. You don't have to really think about it. Serving through churches, it seems to be much more prevalent these days than in the past. So I think when students, we know this because the Center on Philanthropy at PUI, or now IU in Indianapolis, they've done a lot of work to show that the Gen Z, even Gen Y before them, are much more prone to service than we've seen in previous generations. Gen X and my generation for sure.
which is definitely something we could be proud of. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of that growth comes from inspiration from our leaders. We see just in this brief time talking to you, the wealth of experience you bring from other institutions to AU. And we could commend you on that. And we could say that we're very proud of AU from the top down. The president brings so much knowledge and experience as well. And the you two in particular are not so much anomalies anymore
Mhm.
in the AU experience, but kind of the norm of saying, and not to diminish what you've done, but saying that AU is so dedicated to this
Mhm.
type of growth.
Yeah.
And we're bringing in people who inspire this growth, who foster a community of growth
Yeah.
and opportunities for our students to excel.
Yeah.
So having said that, what you mentioned one program already with our athletes and students. Can you say another thing that excites you about Ashland University that we're having here that
Oh,
involves
yeah.
maybe our service or expanding or
Yeah.
just something you're some initiative you're really psyched about right now?
Well, if you haven't noticed, there's a little bit of revival happening on our campus. And if you want to get people others focused, we have to point to our faith. Jesus was the absolute progenitor and paragon of service. And we see a whole generation of students right now, some of them who were directly affected by COVID and saw what it was like to be isolated or separated. They're hungry for belonging. They're hungry for friendships, genuine friendships, and they're hungry for meaning. So take what I'm learning and let's make sure it's meaningful to the people around us. And we're seeing that thrive right now on our campus. If you've not been to a Fellowship of Christian Athletes Tuesday night event, you may be surprised. When I first got here, and this has nothing to do with me, this is everything to do with Joe Magalette and Office of Christian Ministry and what Christ is doing. When I first got here, they probably had, I don't know, maybe 80 to 100 people at a really good week going to FCA. They consistently, and I don't know, Zach, if you're involved in this, but they've consistently had 300, 450, over 500 people over in Redwood Hall. They outgrew the chapel, at least the lower chapel. And they're going like gangbusters. God is doing amazing things. And if you want to see a community, a generation transformed, just watch what Christ is doing. I'm very, very excited about that, Dr. Roble. The students are taking the lead. Christ is taking the lead, but they're taking the lead on our campus. They're modeling behavior that is amazing. It's being selfless and others oriented. There's no other revolution in the history of the world that's more powerful than that. And it's happening at
Wonderful.
AU.
Wonderful, wonderful. And yeah, I'm very excited about that as well. That is just a wonderful thing to see on our campus. And if you don't mind, I'll just do one more question because you've been talking about so many wonderful things, so many examples of growth, so many examples of service, so many examples of just true dedication to AU. So when we then this is the Chicago cynical guy that I am coming through. So we have people like the new president, we have people like you, and then you say we're expanding in our faith. So we have top people who have done service initiatives, who have a wealth of experience, and we have the Christ. So your job should just be pretty easy, right? It's like a cakewalk every year. Or are there still problems that we have? Higher education, are we facing any problems, or is it just like, hey, everything's great, we don't have to worry about anything? Let's just rest on
Well,
our laurels.
yeah, no, not at all. Thankfully, you've mentioned President Petey a few times. He has hit the ground running about 18 months ago as a new president, understanding how this institution works, helping us to move strategically in the direction we need to go. I'm very confident that AU is going to weather the storm that we're seeing with enrollment. A lot of colleges right now, if you look at the headlines, large, small, Ivy League to the most obscure colleges, none of them are insulated from the demographic cliff that we're seeing. So what do I mean by demographic cliff? This is the biggest challenge that higher education is facing right now. In 2008, the last major recession we had, there were fewer babies born, and that's how it works in economies. People have less money, they have fewer babies, there's a connection. 18 years later, these kids are coming to college, but there are a lot fewer of them. So in that time frame, Colleges have realized, okay, we've got too many buildings, we've got too much staff, we're spending too much money, we've got to pull back. While AAU hasn't been hit as hard as some institutions that have merged or closed their doors or shedding hundreds of millions of dollars like Duke, Stanford, Harvard. Everybody has had to shed some, had to make some cuts. University of Chicago in your neck of the woods, Dr. Roble. That is the biggest challenge facing higher education right now is, can you continue to deliver face-to-face bricks and mortar education and charge enough tuition, room, and board to pay for it? And most colleges are saying no. We've got to augment that with College Credit Plus, online, corrections ed. We've got to diversify our income streams to make up for the lower percentage of revenue we get from just straight tuition, room, and board. So that's the number one issue. And how are we dealing with that? Pretty good. This past year, we finished, thanks to the president's leadership and others, we finished with a surplus. This year, we're facing, single-digit budget gap, percentage budget gap. So we're still making some cuts. The main thing is we're not making cuts that I'm aware of that would influence or impact the student experience. So we've been working really hard to make sure that when the students are walking around campus and they're eating in their dining halls and they're attending sports, it seems like everything is going on as normal. So the president's been very, very careful to make sure that we're maintaining the student experience as much as we can. Other challenges for higher education, as you're seeing in the news right now, is the polarization of America. Full stop. We are seeing a polarization economically, hollowing out of the middle class. We're seeing the polarization of conservatives and liberals, where there used to be a lot of across the aisle shaking hands and making deals. There's a lot of name calling. There's a lot of demonizing, not by everyone, but certainly amplified in this social media echo chamber world we live in today. This is a huge challenge. 20 years ago, when I walked down the sidewalk and I saw people, I didn't work here 20 years ago, but when I did, people would look at you in the eye, they didn't have earphones in, and they would say hello. And this is what happens now, right? And I'm guilty of this as well. I'm not pointing fingers. We are human beings trying to make life better for one another, and yet we're not willing to have flesh and blood connections nearly as much as we used to. Now that's changing. Again, Zach's generation, they're realizing being online, scrolling social media, death scrolling, doom scrolling, all this stuff, it doesn't make for, and I don't want to speak for Zach, but it doesn't make for genuine close relationships. But when we are in fellowship, we are in genuine communication with each other, and we have great relationships, life's so much better. So those two challenges, the financial challenge of the demographic cliff and relating to one another as wonderfully, beautifully created images of God and relating to one another, those are major challenges right now facing our college students.
Thank you so much. I agree wholeheartedly, and I think we would be remiss if we didn't remind our college students that you can get those relationships. And one of the wonderful ways that we spent so much time talking about today is through service, through serving your community, through serving the AU community, and gaining those experiences that not only make you a better person, but also do a uncalculable amount of goodwill towards other people. So please, we encourage everyone to do what they can, work in fellowship and work in service. And with that, I'd like to turn it over. Zach has a few questions for you, and then we'll finish up with David. But thank you so much for your candid answering of the questions, Dr. Poole.
You're welcome.
Hey, Dr. Poole. Great to meet you. Obviously, I feel like I've learned a lot already in this call. I just had a couple questions from the student side. So the first one would be just asking about some advice you would give to students, just about trying to balance career ambitions with intellectual curiosity.
Those are great questions, or great parts of the questions. So how do you balance career ambitions with intellectual curiosity? I love that. First and foremost, if your ambition is to serve, as we've been talking about, you can't go wrong. you can't go wrong. If your ambition is to make a lot of money, maybe you can't go wrong, but that's going to be a rougher climb to find meaning and purpose in a fulfilling life. Nothing wrong with making a lot of money. I encourage people to do that. But you have to know first who you are. Know thyself. Above all else, to thine own self be true, right? So how do you get to know yourself? Well, you usually know yourself in one of three ways. One, through prayer. How is God leading you in life? Number two, are the close people in your life, friends, companions, family members who are speaking into you that you trust? Like, hey, Zach, you would be excellent at this. Or, man, I love the way you handle the situation at work and your supervisor's encouraging you in a direction. That's really good feedback. Third would be experiment. Try new things. Say yes. There's an old movie out there called Yes Man from the Jim Carrey days, where he does everything that people ask him to do, and it winds up being this crazy plot where he finds himself after he finds his own identity at the very end, and a great relationship. But you need to experiment. You need to be willing to get out of a narrow view of what you think you are capable of and try things. Join a club, serve with AU Gives, work a campus job, do several internships. Don't just do one or two while you're here. And if you're in the health sciences, you're going to do that no matter what. So how do you know what you want to do, what you want to be, your career ambitions? Those three things: prayer, faithful feedback from those you love, and then experiment with different experiences. I don't know if there's a push or pull with intellectual curiosity. I would just say foster and nurture intellectual curiosity. Read, be in debate. We've talked a lot about debate, healthy debate in these past few weeks since the murder of Charlie Kirk. It's important that we are able to come to the marketplace of ideas, vigorously debate them, and walk away as friends. It's the American way. Look up the Lincoln Douglas debates. They would debate for 30 minutes a turn, for an hour and a half, 2 hours, a whole day in some cases. People were willing to talk and rot out the issues of the day through words. So intellectual curiosity begins with questions, and it begins with an openness to be influenced. So as you're being, as people speak into you about your career and your ambition, hold loosely what might be considered real, what might be considered truth, and test that through the intellectual dialogue, the dialectic we call it, so that you can be firm in your decision making and it's been tested in the marketplace.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. I think that's really important, especially for people of my age, still figuring out what they're passionate about and what they love to do. Um, Earlier, you touched a little bit about service and then also about culture and sports and your involvement in that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I wanted to ask, for someone that's interested in this, how would I be able to turn, service and culture and sports into sort of a meaningful career?
Yeah.
So previous question we talked about like career ambitions with what you like to do. So what would
Yeah.
you say are some ways to kind of transition those interests into an actual career?
Well, the operative word there is passionate. And I define passion is when you're doing that thing and you just lose all track of time. Right? You're in the middle. I love woodworking. So when I'm doing a woodworking project, my wife will come in the garage and say, I just finished my morning coffee, and she comes out. She goes, "Okay, it's time for dinner." I'm like, "What? How is that possible?" So passion is you're just consumed in the work or in the moment or in the study or on the field. You're just consumed with it because it's an activity that matches your heart, that matches your abilities, and those three things come together to give you passion. So how do you know when you're following your passion? You feel like there's nothing else I want to be doing right now, and it's making a meaningful impact. So service culture sports, how can they translate these experiences into meaningful careers? It begins with passion. So it doesn't matter if it comes through service, through interacting with culture, or if you're giving it your blood, sweat, and tears on the field, courts, and in other athletic areas. You need to find that passion. I would say for culture, it's absolutely, this is one of my biggest regrets, Zach, in undergraduate, is I didn't study abroad. I didn't think I could pay for it, but I didn't even check. I didn't even ask. So 4 years went by and I never studied abroad. Study abroad. Study abroad. Find a way to make it happen. If it's not for a full semester, do it for 10 weeks. If you can't do it for 10 weeks, do it for a summer excursion, but get out of the United States and go somewhere else. If you can't get out of the United States, serve in different areas of the community and metropolitan areas, inner city. Get into a different culture, immerse yourself in that. So 2 key themes: explore your passions and immerse yourself in things that are going to help you practice that passion. That will point you to the career. And then your career is not a job. Job can be part of your career, but the career is how you are living out your life's calling. And what's life calling? Frederick Buechner said it best. Life calling is where the world's greatest need meets your deep gladness. I'm paraphrasing. So if you can do what you love and people are benefiting from that, that's a career.
Got it. Yeah, really well put. I definitely resonate with that a lot. When you talked about leadership roles, in whether it's in like government or the nonprofit sector or academia, what kind of qualities or habits would you say are essential for students that want to engage in those types of roles?
Well, I'm going to speak from some of my own research and such, but let me cite to you a book that I think should be essential reading for every college student. It's called The Leadership Challenge. It's by the authors Kouzes, Kouzes, and Posner. And they did the bulk of the research that I think is amazing. 30 years of research in all sectors, nonprofit, private, government. And they looked at what are the top leadership qualities that people exhibit for great leaders, not just your standard managers, but great leaders. And it's this, the acronym MICE, M-I-C-E-E. All right. So Kouzes and Posner had came up with this book, and it begins with model the way. Model the way. Do what you say what you mean, and don't be afraid to do what you're asking others to do. In fact, you probably should have done it already. So model what you're asking your team to do. If you can't model it, don't expect that they're going to do it. Inspire a shared vision. Great leaders who used to stand on a podium and talk about this is the way of the future and here's how we're going to go, and people yell and scream, those are gone. Everybody has access to information. Everybody has access to immediate information. And you need to know that most people know what's happening in your organization before you do as a leader. So if you're going to inspire people to follow you, it needs to be a shared vision. Inspire a shared vision. Challenge the process, C. Just because it's always been done that way does not mean it should be continuing that way, or doesn't mean that it can't be tried a new way in a different context. So challenge the process. Don't ever expect that something that's working will continue working, or something that didn't work in the past won't. There's a funny story that I've used before about a great-granddaughter who asked her mother, "Mom, why do you cut the ends off of the ham before you put it in the oven?" She's like, "I don't know. My mom always cooked that way." So mom went to her mom, the grandmother, and said, "Mom, I noticed, my daughter just asked me, how can we cut the ends off a ham?" She said, "Well, I don't know. My mom always cut the ends off her ham." So they go to the great-grandmother, and the great-grandmother is asked the same question. She said, "Well, when we were just married, we didn't have enough money to buy a proper stove, so we just had this little wood stove, and we had to cut the ends of the ham to get it inside the stove." So don't ever assume that just because the way things are done is the right or most effective way. So challenge the process. And then 2 E's. One, if you're going to ask somebody as a leader to do something that is difficult, hard, which is pretty much all work. If it's not hard, it's probably not work. Then equip them. Equip them with the skills, the resources, and the equipment to do it well. Equip them to do it with excellence. So equipping others for success. And then the last one is encourage the heart. Zach, I don't know how much you're carrying on your back with past trauma or issues or broken relationships or frustrations, but we carry that with us. Every one of us carries a backpack, an invisible backpack on us of things that are heavy, things that are difficult, and joys and celebrations as well. But we're carrying around with us lots and lots of heaviness, especially as you get older and life happens. When you're at work, which is for most of us, for 40 years, you're working with other people in a setting like this. Most of your relationships, most of your waking time are with other people, human beings. And we need constant encouragement. We don't need smoke blown up. We don't need rose-colored glasses. We just need encouragement that we're going the right direction. And if we're not going the right direction, that the supervisor can see a better person in you than what you're currently performing at, and they're going to help you get there. Encouragement. In some cases, we do have to split ways and then help them get to the next position or next job or next job in the company. So encouraging people is such an important part of great leadership work. So model the way, inspire a shared vision, challenge others to act, right? Challenge the process, I'm sorry, equip others to act, and encourage the heart. I have found that to be an incredibly simple mnemonic and formula that I try to use imperfectly in my life. And then the last thing I'll say, this author, this book that I'm reciting here, they wrote another book and they said, okay, forget all that and just do one thing. And they titled that book Credibility. Credibility. No leader can be great if they don't walk the walk and talk the talk, if they don't do what they say they're going to do and say what they mean, or if there's something in their lives that creates an image of incredibility or discredits them. So you'll see all the time these wonderful celebrities and leaders who fall from grace because they've had an issue. It's very, very difficult to keep credibility. It's almost impossible to earn it back. So those things I would say are probably the most important things that students need to do to foster great leadership, no matter what area they go into.
Got it. That was amazing. I'll be sure to follow. I've written it all down too, so I'll be able to follow that. Um, Last question I have is for students. Feels a little bit silly asking because it's kind of been the whole podcast, but just one piece of advice you wish you had received as a student, maybe some guidance for students that are listening.
Um, love above all else. That's it. Love above all else. Love, even if you have to sacrifice yourself. I don't mean, in some life or death situation, although it could be that. But when you're looking at someone across the table or in the room and you have an issue, you have a concern, or you just have a different point of view, recognize the inherent value of that other person sitting across the table, that they may be hurting, or they may be insecure, or they may feel like they're not heard. Take that support first approach. Hey, let's disagree, but let's stay focused on we're going the same direction. We all have much more in common than not. If I did something to offend you, please let me know so I can remedy that. Man, that just goes such a long way. Love first. And when there are issues, take it to the person directly. We used to have a saying, take it to the source. I won't talk about the acronym, but that is an important skill I've learned for my whole life. If someone has wronged me or I think someone has wronged me, then I take it to the source. Go to them first in truth and love, Matthew 18 says. Go to them first in truth and love and share your grievance. You may win them over. If that doesn't work, continues in Matthew, take about a trusted friend, a witness. Go to them. Keep it small. Try to keep the drama down, right? Don't text on social media. Don't blow it up on Yik Yak. Go to them. Say, here's what I'm seeing. Use I statements. That communicates, this is where I think I've experienced a wrong. Here's where I think you can help me, and we talk it out. And if that doesn't work, says take it to the church, or in our context, take it to your RA, take it to your fraternity, take it to the judicial board, whatever, and let a group of people talk about and how to resolve it. But it's all predicated on love. We first love one another because God first loved us.
Got it.
Love is all you need.
All right. That's it for me. I guess I'll throw it back to David. I think he has one more question.
Yeah, I know you got to get going here, Dr. Poole. So we really appreciate all your responses, and thanks to Andrew and Zach for a lot of great questions. To end on a lighter note, or a dad joke alert, a lower note. I know that you and life calling and career coach Brandon Wells have an extracurricular activity that you share. Can you tell us a little bit about that, how it all came together, and why it's important to you?
Yeah, man. We talked about passion earlier. This is one of them for me. I've been a lifelong drummer and still learning, but we have a dad band called Low E. We joke it's supposed to mean low E string on a guitar, right? We talk about low expectations. Just keep your expectations low, folks. We do about 30 gigs a year, usually in the spring, summer, and early fall, and different restaurants, community organizations out there at Foundation Plaza next to Ohio Fire and South Street Grill, Uniontown. We're going to be in Uniontown this Saturday evening for Oktoberfest. We just have a great time. So I was new to the community, and a mutual friend of Brandon's and mine said, hey, why don't you come to this Christmas party at Brandon Wells' house, which if you've never been to a Wells Christmas party, it's quite a thing. But we met there, and he was like, he heard that I played drums. He said, hey, do you want to just come over and jam sometime? This is before the band was created. And we had such a great time. We hit it off as best friends. And lo and behold, we started finding other people, played bass, keyboard, and Low E was created in spring of 2018, I think. Had a hiatus for the COVID time, but we're still going strong this fall.
Yeah, it's great. So everyone should go check them out when you have a chance. That I have not, but I will try to do that sometime soon. So anyway, I know that you're really busy and you got to get going. So we thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. And my thanks to Zach and Dr. Roble. And thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of Wings of Wisdom. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, folks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in to the WoW podcast, where curiosity meets inspiration. Brought to you by the Writing and Communication Center at Ashland University.